Okay, we're going to talk about Claude Frederick Bastiat, or Bastiat. I don't know which one it is. And I use those words interchangeably. I mean, those pronunciations interchangeably. So if you're French, it's probably Bastiat. Anyway, he is super awesome. He's one of my favorite authors because he's funny and sarcastic, but he's really powerful. And he really gets his point across while making it really interesting. So he was born in 1801 in France. And so this is, French Revolution, the big first one is 89. So that's just happened not very long ago. And it's interesting because his dad was a successful businessman, and they lived on an estate that had been taken away from a family, I can't remember their name, an aristocratic family during the French Revolution. So it's kind of like, and then later on he inherited the estate. So it's kind of like the French Revolution tried to do away with the aristocracy, but they just kept being an aristocracy because the estate got handed to a new family. So they had this estate because of that French Revolution. His mother died when he was 7, and I didn't find if he had siblings. I don't know if he was an only child, maybe. And then his dad died when he was 9, and he was an orphan by the time he was 9 years old. His grandpa took him in and raised him, and they sent him to some schools and things like that. But by the time he was, how old was he? He would have been, I think he was 17 or 18. He took this job with his uncle that was the kind of thing his dad had done before his dad had died, and it was a family export business. And it's really interesting because he came of age, he really grew up and became a man during the Napoleonic Wars. And not only was France in a very turbulent situation during all of this time, they had their revolution, and there were multiple revolutions for the next, 50, 75 years, something like that. And they kind of were trying to have an assembly and a representative government, but it didn't always really go really smoothly, and often it was handed to the aristocracy anyway, and so they just kept having these governmental form changes. And during Napoleon's reign, during the Napoleonic Wars, there was a lot of government intervention. So here he is in this private business in a middle-class family, kind of upper middle-class family, and he's experiencing firsthand what it's like to have the government intervene in your business and try to get ahead financially. So he knows exactly what that's like because he serves in the family business. Well, then his grandpa becomes ill and asks him to come back to the estate and help take care of him. That goes on for like a year or two. And by the time he's 24, his grandpa's passed away. He inherits the estate. So now he's kind of he's kind of independently wealthy. He can kind of basically have enough to take care of himself. So he's comfortable. And he had been longing for more education. And what he really wanted to do was go abroad and study at a really elite university, but he never got to do that. And so when his grandpa died and he inherited the estate, he had the opportunity to then take the time to study that he wanted to take before when he was younger. So he spends a lot of time studying all the stuff, and he kind of becomes an expert, kind of a mini expert, self-educated expert, right, in these different philosophy and government and economics and all this kind of stuff. Religion and everything. And so in 1830, he's now 29 or so, and in 1830 there's a middle-class revolution. And he becomes Justice of the Peace after this revolution, and he starts serving in government. And then there's not a lot of details about kind of how he was living his life. As far as I can see, he never married and never had children, and study and serving in government was kind of his major role in his adult life. But he didn't live long. He only lived to be 49. So he starts serving at about 30, and so he has kind of a public career for almost 20 years. And he learns a lot about how things are and how he thinks they should be. And so he starts writing based on his experiences trying to work in government and trying to get the government out, and what he believes are true government and economics principles that he's discovered in practice and that he's discovered in some of the great works that he's read. So he writes his first article. It's published in 1844, so he would have been about 43 years old. And for the next, what would that be, 5 years, basically, he writes, and first he starts touring France. So he realizes, okay, I know what the answers are. I know that we need to stop government intervention. I know that we need to honor rights and economic principles, and I've kind of figured some stuff out, and I've got to get it out to the public. So he writes prolifically. I mean, I've got three books. I've got Economic Sophisms, Economic Harmonies, and what's the other one? And then Political Economy. I think they're all essays. I think it's all just collections of essays, and they're fantastic. And he did all of it in 5 years. So he's writing and he's publishing these essays, and he goes out and starts touring France, trying to get his message out. Well, here's the sad part of the story. While he's touring France, he contracts tuberculosis and becomes really, really ill. But while he's ill, in 1848, I think it is the next French Revolution. Is that right? Yes. Another major French Revolution, and that's when he's elected to the Assembly. He only serves in the Assembly 2 terms. Maybe not even that. And he's too ill most of the time to get up and speak in front of the Assembly, although he does it a handful of times. And when you read his essays, what you're going to see is that he's addressing specific French people that are in the French legislature at the time that he is. And he's talking specifically about the kinds of things that they're promoting and the laws that they're putting forth and passing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he's talking to specific people about specific stuff. While he's writing these essays, and this is what is so cool. We've got, without question, what is seen, what is not seen in the law are my 2 favorites. But most everything of his is very worth reading. But here's, and there's a separate post, we'll do one on the law as well, but he's speaking to specific legislation and specific individuals in a specific place and time. But what he says is universal. What he says is true for everybody all the time. He's talking about principles, and so they're true for you and I right now, and it is so, his works are gaining in popularity. They're part of the Austrian school tradition. He's seen as one of the founders of the Austrian school. Mises studied him extensively. And he also is seen as one of the founders of the libertarian movement. And both of those are free market economic approaches, which he was obviously a big proponent of, and he made some of the foundational arguments for free market, some of the best and clearest that have ever been made. And so he is so worth reading, and he's very fun to read, and he'll quote, like, some of my favorite stuff is like when he quotes Rousseau and he's like, yeah, good luck with that, Rousseau, and I hope that works out for you. And this guy says we're going to change human nature, and yeah, right. I mean, he doesn't use exactly those words, but it's like that. It's that kind of feeling, and it's super funny. He's kind of, Locke is a little bit like that, but I think Bastiat's a little bit better that way. So he's engaging, interesting. He flips from point to point. He makes very poignant, clear, awesome arguments. They're pointed to specific things that were happening in France at the time. One that comes to mind is what's the word when you help pay for something? Subsidizing the arts. That's a big one that we do today, that he's like, that is really bad news, you need to not do that. And so anyway, it's good stuff. He contracts tuberculosis, he can't travel, he goes to somewhere, Italy or somewhere, to try to get well. He doesn't get well. He dies abroad, and he had some friends around him. As he was dying, he called them to his bed, and he's laying there dying, and he murmurs, the truth, and then he dies. It's really cool. So he is a great guy. encourage you to learn more about him. Here's a couple resources. I'll link these for you. Bastiat.org is good. There's like one sentence bio, so it's not very helpful there. And some of the links don't work, especially to some of the university pages. I guess the universities changed their stuff, and maybe it's static, maybe it was put there a long time ago and it's still there, but it's an easy place to find some links to some of his writings. So you could try Bastiat.org. Mises.org is basically the hub for the Austrian school, and they've got his works on there. Of course, they're all public domain, so you can read anything you want online. You can watch what is seen, what is not seen in the law. There's links there for those. Also, econlib, econlib.org, econlib.org, has pages on him and some biographical material on some of his works. So those are all really good resources that I've linked for you, but Frederick Bastiat, he is awesome. I think everybody should read his stuff. And you know what the best part is? The best part is that even if you think you don't care about economics, and even if you think that you don't care about government and all that kind of stuff, Bastiat is going to teach you how to be better at your personal finances. Because the things that he teaches are not just true of a civilization or a culture, they're true of individuals and individual families. And he makes those connections for you and shows you that when individuals save, a national economy thrives. And it's brilliant, and it's so true, and it's principle-based, and it's good stuff. So really sink your teeth into Bastiat and have a great time.